In this tutorial, I want to show you how to create a couple of rooms. I'm going to connect them with a hallway, and then I'm going to show you some optimization techniques. So let's begin by selecting a texture, selecting our caulk texture so that we are saving our memory in here. So as I've pointed out in previous tutorials, load up our common textures for our caulk. Go back to textures. Is that the caulk texture does not take up as much texture memory and will save you some grief whenever you're working with large maps, because it won't have to load up the textures into memory. Alright, I'm going to make the room about 128 high. Oversized. Alright, and I'm going to use a little cheating method here. I'm going to use the hollow button. Why is that cheating? Because I may have pointed out before. See how the hollow button, what it does is it creates all these overlapping brushes. That's not good for the game, because if those overlapping brushes are ever seen, it can cause some unexpected errors. It'll cause texture flickering and some other strange things to happen. So I'm going to hit this. So what I'm doing is I'm moving the brushes around. Hold down the shift, left click, so that they are not overlapping. Hit the escape key. Hit that escape key many times, because I don't want to accidentally be manipulating brushes that I don't expect. Now let's get some textures in here. Let's load up the base floor. Let's get the base wall. I like those base textures because they're very simple. Doesn't take a lot of thinking for these tutorials. There's a lot of good ones in there. I double click the texture folder so it'll load all the textures into memory. Go back to textures. Here they are. Let's select the wall by holding down the shift and the control key. Select the texture, and it loads right up. And you can see this wall right in here is 128. Hold down the control and hit the tab to change the views. You see it is 128 units high. These textures are preset so that they are 128 units. So it should fit perfectly right in there and duplicate horizontally for us. Hit the escape. I'm going to shift control, select just that surface, because if I hold down the shift without the control key, it'll select the entire brush. Shift control. Just the middle mouse button by itself, copy that texture. Select the wall, copy that texture. Now, escape. Let's select the floor texture. Let's go over to media. And let's load base floor. Into textures. I want something, a small dark square will do for our tutorial here. I think there's something going on with that one. Just want something plain. Perfect. That looks great. Let's pick a different one for our ceiling. Let's make it a little lighter. How about this one? That one will work great. There we go. Basic room. I'm going to save this so that we don't lose anything. I'm going to save it under my test 3 map. Save often. Saves you a lot of grief, because if anything goes wrong, you'll have a backup. Alright, let's create another room that we will be connecting to. What I'm doing is I'm going around and I'm holding the shift key and selecting all the brushes in that room, because I'm going to hit the space key and make a copy of it. I'm going to drag that copy over to here. Let's give it a little bit of a distance. Moving my camera around using the arrow keys. You can see I have another room, all caulk on the outside to save the texture memory. All textured as the other room was on the inside. Now let's draw some hallways. what I did was I selected an outside caulk texture, so it's automatically selected. I don't have to look through the list for it. Now we want to create a floor first. Hit the space key to just copy, and then I can drag it around, shape it. Let's see, I want to center that up a little bit. Escape, move this one in, center it up. There we go, that'll be our hall, and that'll be our hall floor. Now, I am going to miter this floor a bit, but we'll get into that. Let's do that later. Now let's make some walls. I want to create a wall that's the same width. What I did was I just selected it, I hit the space bar to copy it. Now I'm just changing the shape so that we have our wall. I'm going to copy that wall over to the other side, bring it to the shape we need, copy it over here, so you don't have to worry about the height since I'm just copying and pasting them with a space bar. Save me a little time on creating each brush. There we go. Now, I started to talk about mitering escape. That was because, you see right in here, if I were to take this brush and put it here. Now, whenever I load this, texture it up and load it into the game, I now have two surfaces on this one wall. There's no point in having two surfaces there when I can miter the edge and only have one surface. By mitering, what I mean is, let's hit the E key. That brings up edge manipulation, E for edge. I can drag these edges around by these little blue dots. I'll grab that blue dot right there, move it in, now it's angled. Escape away from it. I'll select the one next to it, E, I'll drag that over. Now I drag that edge into place. And now I only have one escape. I only have one surface on each wall to worry about. Also helps me with the texture memory. Now, I was thinking, also texturing, I meant, that I'm going to also miter the floor so that we have one single line going across. So that all this division of the hallway, whenever we make our map into polygons, whenever we compile it, it's not as complicated. And I'll drag that over. I'm not going to worry about this corner over here because that's an outside corner. No one is ever going to see that. They're only going to see the inside of it. Oh, where's my camera? Alright, they are only going to see this inside one face. They're not going to see the outside, so I don't need to deal with that. Now we need our ceiling. I am just going to copy the floor that I made, which is why I made the floor just now. Space bar, drag it up, put it into place. There we go. Now we need a hole. We need to cut a hole in the wall for our new hallway. Get into the room. Okay, I am going to select the wall, drag it over, copy it, put the copy on the other side, and let's do that edge manipulation with the E key to miter our edge. Escape over here, E, escape. I'm going to do the same thing with the hall walls. I'm going to drag those edges in. Escape, make sure everything is deselected. Let's go into the other room and do the same thing. We want to cut the hole. Now, obviously I am not using the CSG subtraction tool. That might be an interesting tool to use. What would allow me to do, if it worked properly, was to draw a brush right in the middle where I want that hole, and then subtract it from the brush that's there. so that the hole would automatically be created. But what we have learned is that that tool is very unpredictable. It creates errors that are very hard to find, very hard to solve, and we just consider it an evil tool, we being the community. It's something you want to stay away from, which is why I prefer just to draw out my brushes. Draw them, move them around. In the end, it saves a lot of time. Now we want to texture. Let's texture our floor. Select that floor, middle mouse button. See that? It copies the texture right in. Now what's great about the copying, instead of just adding the texture, is let's make that texture a little askew here. I'm going to hold down the, select just that face. I'm holding down the shift and moving the arrow keys, and you see I'm just moving that texture out of alignment. And you see it doesn't line up anymore. To prevent that, if I just copy the texture by just hitting that middle mouse key on the one I'm copying from, that texture lines perfectly. Oh, you know what? While I'm in this room, let's do the walls. Let's do the ceiling. Let's see if we have to retexture the floor in this room. Nope, looks like it lined up. Looks like we are set on that. Okay, our room's done. Our hall's done. Now we need a player in here. I'm going to add my player spawn. Right click, info, player start. Since all our test maps are generally done in single player, because that's the simplest way to load up a test map, I put in a single player spawn point instead of a deathmatch. Put my player in, make sure he was on the floor. Hit the N key to bring up this entity editor. Now I'll hit 360 degrees. That is the direction I want my player to be facing when I start. Let's turn this camera around. Now, you see that arrow there? If you look closely, there's actually an arrow will show up on this. I'll show you in a second. That is the direction that the player is going to be facing when he spawns into the map. If I hit 270, see how the arrow changed? And now an arrow was added here. The arrow was added because it's no longer the default. So I'll move back to 360. He's facing that way. Very nice. Now he'll be facing the hall when he spawns in, and it won't be so confusing. It won't be facing a wall, facing a corner. Escape. Let's escape our selection and let us add some lights. Just this basic light right in the middle of the room. Bring it up towards the ceiling. Alright, hit the space, bring it over. Hit the space to copy it, bring it into the hall. Space one more time. There we go, escape. Now we've got our room, our lights, our hall, back into our other room. Now before I show you some optimization techniques, let me show you what this looks like. I'll save it, run the BSP command to load it. No errors showed up, that's great. I'll hit the F2 key to load up our little game. Hit the tilde key to bring down the console. I'll type in dev map, developer map, game mp test 3 we call the map, and let's load it up. Great, here we are. Here we're in a room. Nice halls. Into the other room. Now, I'm going to show you some optimization techniques. Let me show you a little developer trick. Drop down the console. I'll type in r_show tris. And 1 to turn it on, 0 to turn it off. Now you can see whenever I entered that command, what it did was draw out the triangles, the polygons, that the compiler created whenever we made this map. Now, why is this map not fully optimized? Well, I'll show you another little trick. It is R show over draw. That's R_show overdraw space 1 to turn it on. Now, it is hiding all those brushes and showing me all that is being drawn. You see the other room? I can't see the other room when I'm in the game normally, so why should the game be drawing it for me? That's not very well optimized, and I'm going to show you how to fix that problem. Now, another problem. How can I see the console? I can't. I'm going to hit arrow up for my last command, which I know is the R show draw. Backspace to delete the 1. Enter in my 0. Hit enter. Alright, we got it. Now let's exit out of here and optimize that map. Hit escape key, make sure nothing's accidentally selected. I'm going to go into my media and open up some common, well, actually some editor textures. Let's hide what I have. Okay, in the editor texture set, I'm going to load that up, is something called visportal. The visportal texture. That is what we want to work with. That is going to help me create portals into the different nodes. Let's see if I can explain that. Each of these rooms and the halls and the areas, whenever the map is compiled, it's going to be compiled into nodes. So this room right down here, that'll become a node. This hall, because of the way it is divided up by the brushes, will probably become a node. And so on. So now, whenever the player is in this room and into this node, if this node can see the adjoining node, it is drawn. And obviously, since they're right next to each other, they're touching, it's going to be drawn. Now, if this node can see the node over here, it is drawn. Yes, I would say that when a player is in this room, he can see this area right here, so it will be drawn. And the same goes for over here, except the player cannot see this other room, so it will not be drawn. So we want to tell the game, let's divide this up, let's create portals into those nodes so that the game knows whether or not to draw that area. I have my visportal texture selected. I'm going to draw out the brush, make sure it is touching all the walls, all the corners. And that will create a portal. Now, I seem to have forgotten something. Let us get another texture in here. Go into Common Textures. I need to select a no draw. If I leave this portal textured the way it is, see it is, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but let's see. If I leave these textured the way it is, let's get out of this window because it is slowing me down like crazy. I have this fat brush that is textured on both sides that is going to cause it to divide the map in both sides. What I will do to show you what I mean, I'll make this room textured all over with that visportal so you can see it get divided up later. Let's escape because I don't need to have that accidentally selected. Go into the other room. Where is my other room? Getting a little lost. This time I will select the no draw texture. Found in the common. Not that. I want no draw. Not no draw solid. We don't want it to be solid so the player can't walk through it. We want it to be no draw. Make sure it is covering all 4 walls. And now, since I know that there is a division right here along where these walls touch, I want to texture this one surface. Let's get rid of some of these textures by selecting, I went up to materials and said show in use, so it only shows me the ones I am using. Let's select, well, let's make sure nothing's selected. Let's select just this one face and texture that with our portal, our visportal, so that the rest of the texture is no draw, will not be drawn, will not create any polygons, any structure in the game, and only this surface will become our portal. That's it. Let's save. Let's BSP to compile the map. No errors. Alright, let's load the editor. Isn't that neat how it shows the globe in there since the show tris is still turned on? Okay. I'm going to hit the arrow up till I come up with my dev map. Saves me a couple keys. Let's load that test 3 that we just compiled. Okay, the first room I told you, I textured both sides with the portal. See what happened? I now have extra geometry that I don't need in the map. But I bet you if I go over to the other one, you're not going to see that extra geometry, see? And I just ran through it because no draw means there's nothing there. It's not solid. I can run through it, and only that one surface is creating the poly. All that geometry is gone. Now let me show you how that was optimized by opening up the other command, the r_show overdraw. Let's turn it on with a 1. Look at that. Now only the areas that I can actually see are being drawn. Run into the room. The other room's not being drawn. My frame rate is going to be spectacular. If this was a large map, well optimized, that's what you want. Happy mapping.